Welcome to the very first episode of Awakening the Ordinary. Thanks for tuning in. Since this is the inaugural episode, and since the presidential inauguration is happening in just a few days, I thought we might as well cover some politics. And look, I get it.
Politics? Are you serious? I thought this was a spiritual podcast.
Okay, first of all, are you okay? Why do you sound like that? And second of all, it is. Trust me. Trust me. I think sometimes when people hear the word spiritual, they get the wrong idea. So, yes, we do have immortal souls. Yes, our consciousness is not from this world, okay? But we are still in this world, and we still need to be good stewards of it. And the best way that we can take care of this world and take care of each other is by being involved in politics. I'm here to tell you today politics is spiritual warfare. Let me say it again, brothers and sisters, for those ones in the back. I said, politics is spiritual warfare. Can I get a amen? Okay, all right, enough of the theater. What are we actually talking about today, for real? Well, this episode is basically about the rise of populism globally, the rise of extremism, and kind of just the general state of politics in the US. So if you are new to politics, if you're not involved in politics, you couldn't care less about it, don't worry. This is going to be kind of like Politics 101 for the spiritually inclined, okay? And if you like politics, but you have no idea what kind of woo woo crap I'm going to be talking about, well, I'm glad to have you. I was there too, and I can't wait for you to start this journey with me. If you're into both, awesome, good. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. It's going to be great. An historic election just transpired, and with it, probably one of the most unprecedented political comeback stories that has ever happened. Crusty old man Joe threw him into the pits of the Death Star. Somehow, Orange Man returned. Now, people will talk about how the Harris campaign was horribly run, or the Electoral College is completely unfair, or swing states matter too much, blah blah blah. We're not going to talk about that today. You can go hear about that anywhere you want. And anyway, this kind of thing is happening on a global level, right? I mean, populism is rising everywhere in the world. Extremism is happening everywhere. So this is clearly not a US issue. The Harris campaign has nothing to do with what's going on in Germany. But it's still important to talk about it here in the US. So just a disclaimer, this is coming from a very US centric worldview, okay? I live in the US. I've always lived in the US. I've got American flags and bold eagles flying through my brain 24/7, okay? So sorry in advance. I do still think a lot of it is going to resonate with you no matter where you're from, though, because some of these fundamental truths are happening globally, like I said. So the other thing I want to say is these are just my current opinions right now. I cannot promise that I'm going to feel the same way in a decade. So please don't come at me if you're watching this in 2035, okay? If you disagree with whatever I have to say, I would love to hear from you. Seriously, hit me up in the comments. We'll talk about it. If you like what you hear, if you want to join the community, take a look at the description. I'm going to have the link for the Discord down there. And I'd love to chat with you there too. So it would be so easy to just pick and choose, specific favorite problems that are easy to pin everything on. So let's do that. Let's do that. There are three problems I want to blame for everything that's going on right now. The first problem is a little less esoteric and crazy, and it's actually what this episode was named after. The founding fathers warned us about political parties and partisanship. In George Washington's farewell address, which was written by him and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, he talked about the dangers of political parties and partisanship. So, first of all, what is partisanship? Partisanship is basically the idea of instead of following your virtues, instead of following your dogma, your ideals, you just toe the party line because that's what the elites want you to do, and that's the team that you're part of. The problem with political parties is that they breed partisanship. Instead of following what you think is right, instead of doing what you think would actually help the most people, you're sort of just forced into doing what the rest of your team wants because they're your group and they're not the other guys. And so you got to just fall in line. George Washington warned us that if political parties were to take hold, we'd be in this cycle of one party winning and then the other party winning and then wanting to enact political revenge against the first party. And then the other party would win again later and just do the same thing but worse to the first party, and it would just go back and forth in this brutal cycle of one party just humiliating the other one politically any chance they got, and it would breed contempt and strife. They would never be able to get along or agree on things simply because they were on opposite teams. The other thing he warned about was the fact that it would drive people to want to overthrow the government in ways that don't follow the Constitution or the rule of law. They would be angry and storm the Capitol and try and burn everything down. I mean, hello? Does that sound familiar to you guys? January 6th? Hello? Is this thing on? George Washington warned us about this hundreds of years ago, and we're doing exactly what he said we shouldn't. The ironic thing about this whole issue is that politicians should be kind of most familiar with what George Washington said because every year they read his farewell address. And in a stunning twist of tragic irony, they always make sure to take turns, with one party reading it one year, the other party reading it the next. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Now, the second issue is more of an economic one. We have a shrinking middle class, we have stagnating wages. Jobs are disappearing by the millions because they're being replaced by AI. And that's not something that's going to just go away. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. As technology advances, there's going to be less and less need for humans to be at the wheel for any of this stuff. In some ways, quite literally, not at the wheel. The majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. And whose fault is that? Well, the oligarchs would be happy to tell you it's your fault. You're just not working hard enough. You just need to put in more hours, get that grind set going. Look, I'm here to tell you it is not your fault at all, okay? These oligarchs would rob you of every hour of the day if they could. Now, let me back up. What exactly is an oligarch? Well, back in the day, oligarchs were noble families, noble houses. It was the idea that these people were elite or special just because of their bloodline or because of the family that they belonged to. Nowadays, an oligarch is somebody who controls a vast amount of power, political power, because of the wealth that they have. So when you think about an oligarch, basically think Elon Musk. Elon Musk is like the poster child for an oligarch. He invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the most recent presidential election. And because of that, he gets to determine policy now. And he's trying to do it worldwide too. Now, the thing about these oligarchs is they didn't just accidentally become unfathomably wealthy. I mean, look, Elon Musk did not strategically plan his father owning an emerald mine, okay? That's not what I mean. But they use their wealth and influence to wriggle their way into our politics and lobby for things that are just outright bad for the majority of people, but it lines their pockets. And so they get more money by abusing the working class, and then they use that money to wriggle their way into politics and abuse the working class for more money. It's just a vicious cycle that repeats. I guess the core of the second issue is basically this. Right now, our society has this expectation that from the day you turn 18 until the day you retire, you're going to be spending 8 hours a day making somebody else rich. Now, it's not just 8 hours a day, is the thing. You always have a lunch break. You usually have your commute. And don't even get me started on this whole crusade to get people to return back to the office. I can't even. But they try and get you to spend basically 2/3 of your life sleeping and making them money. And in exchange, you have the glorious benefit of being able to put food on your table. God forbid you get sick because you're screwed. I mean, right now, living paycheck to paycheck, you are tied to your employer. You're enslaved by them because if you dare take time away to take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, well, guess what? You're out the door. They will pay you as little as possible. They will tie your employment to your health care. They will make it so that you have to give up 2/3 of your life just to put food on the table and live in a house. Of course, people have a problem with that. They don't want to feel like they're enslaved by this oligarchical billionaire class who gets to decide whether or not they get to have a house. So, yeah, they're going to turn to extremism. They're going to turn to populism. They're going to turn to whoever says they'll listen. And they're willing to burn the house down to do it, which really ties into our last point. I did say this was a spiritual podcast after all. The world right now is spiritually bankrupt. We have lost faith in each other, in our institutions, in God. It's no wonder there's a loneliness epidemic right now. With no community, no connection, no hope, what are you supposed to do? Two important things that you should know about spirituality, or at least my interpretation of it. The first is that spirituality is entirely bespoke. So it's unique, completely unique to each individual. It's going to mean a different thing to everybody, and everybody's spiritual journey is completely their own. So, when I talk about spirituality, when I talk about spiritual concepts, please understand that there is kind of a implied, in my opinion, or to me, after everything. Everybody's journey is going to be different, and I don't want to dictate how yours should be. The second important thing that you should know about spirituality, to me, is that it's based around the idea of universal oneness. Now, universal oneness is not a new idea. The most modern interpretation of it goes back to Carl Jung, who talked about collective unconscious. But obviously, spirituality is a lot older than that. But it's basically the idea that everybody in the earth is connected in an unseen way, a collective unconscious. We all tap into the same force using our mind, our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it. The idea is that whatever kind of vibes you put out there are going to affect the people around you, otherwise known as basically the golden rule. Treat other people the way that you want to be treated, not just because it's a good thing to do and it's what you should do, but because it's actually going to come back to you. When you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. As it stands, the vast majority of people are so caught up in their daily struggle that they can hardly take the time to be mindful or appreciative, be grateful for anything that they have around them. And honestly, who can blame them? Right now, it's just a struggle to even make ends meet. When you're in a survival situation, the only thing that you're going to be thinking about is how to survive. The last thing that's going to be on your mind is putting out good vibrations or sowing the wind or what, like whatever, right? I mean, you're just trying to live your life. And unfortunately, we're so full of desperation that we can't be full of love. And that means that we can't feel love either. It's no wonder that people would turn to extremism and populism and put their faith in whatever leader comes around promising to pay attention to them, promising to help them live a fulfilled life. So that paints a pretty bleak picture, right? I mean, we've got political parties running rampant. We've got oligarchs controlling our everyday lives. And right now, the world is spiritually bankrupt. We have nothing to put our faith in. So, what are we supposed to do? Nothing. You give up. It's over. It's done. I'm just kidding. Obviously, the most important thing right now is to keep in mind that you have to take small steps. Okay. Being thankful every day, feeling gratitude for the things that you have, practicing mindfulness on a daily basis, understanding that you are not just this meat suit that you're in. You're not even your mind, you're your soul. And that is immortal and worth so much more than the daily stressors of life. Understand that the good vibrations that you put out into the world are going to come back to you. When you give love and light and peace and beauty to the world, that's what you're going to experience too. My name is Daniel. Thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of Awakening the Ordinary. Don't forget to check out the description for the link to the Discord, and I'll see you in the comments section.